Welcome to session 4. This is our lesson for Thursday, August 12th. For this lesson, we are going to continue with the same problem that we had in our previous session. It is right here at the top of this page. We are working with the expression in this problem of 6 times 32 minus 8. And we're going to look at some different ways that you can solve this problem, different ways that you can evaluate that expression so that we can look at the total cost of the posters. The first way is to picture it. So what we want to pay attention to here is how many boxes do we have in all? So all of these boxes all together. Take a second or a few seconds to figure out how many boxes there are all together. There are 32 boxes for the 32 people that are going on this trip. Now, look at what is inside the boxes. $6. So they put $6 for every person going on the trip. That's how much the posters cost. Then they marked out some of the boxes. If you count up the number of boxes that are marked out, you will find that it is 8 boxes that were marked out. Because remember, the adults are not getting posters. So this picture is one way to look at this expression and to evaluate it. Then we have model it, where you use the words to help us understand how the expression matches our problem. So right here in our problem, we wanted to find the difference between the total number of people and the adults, because it specifically told us that there were 8 adults and that only the students wanted posters. So this is a group that we have to find, which also tells us that we need our parentheses here. So our difference is subtraction. So when we are trying to find the difference between two things, we are subtracting. Our cost was $6. We want $6 times each of the people that are getting posters. So when we're talking about times, we are talking about multiplication in this particular problem. So the cost times the difference between the total number of people and the adults. This is another way that you can look at the expression. Now we're going to take a look at the connected questions. Number 1 says, using the order of operations, what are the steps in evaluating 6 times 32 minus 8? And we talked about this in the previous lesson. If you watched the video all the way through, then you saw me working this using the GEMS model, or the GEMS acronym for order of operations. So GEMS says that I start with grouping, then exponents, then multiply or divide, then subtract or add. So groupings, here's my grouping. 32 minus 8 would be 24. I bring down everything in front of that, and there's nothing behind my parentheses. Now I'm looking at exponents. There are not any exponents. Then I move on to multiply or divide. And there is multiplication here, so I would multiply 6 times 24. When I do that, I get $144. So the total cost of the posters is going to be $144. Question number 2 asks you to evaluate the expression by omitting the parentheses. So if you omit the parentheses, you take it away. So now we have 6 times 32 minus 8. If I'm following that same order of operations, my GEMS method, then I don't have any groupings. I don't have any exponents. So I would be starting with multiplication. If I start with multiplication, I would have 6 times 32. So take a minute to pause the video and find what 6 times 32 would be. 6 times 32 is going to be 192. I bring down what is left in my expression, and I move on to my next step in my order of operations. The S is subtract or add. I do have subtraction here, so I would subtract 192 minus 8. Take a minute to pause the video and find what the difference between 192 and 8 would be. You would get 184. So looking at this, the only thing we did was take the grouping symbols away, the parentheses. Number 2 wants you to explain why the grouping symbols are needed for this problem. So take a minute to explain why the grouping symbols are needed. If you need help with this explanation, please ask your parents to message me so that we may Zoom and go over why we need the grouping symbols for this problem. Let's take a look at number 3. Number 3 says, Morgan says you can evaluate 6 times 32 minus 8 using 3 steps. Morgan says you can multiply 32 by 6, multiply 8 by 6, and then subtract those two products. So that's what I want you to do on your paper right now. We're going to do 6 times 32, and we're going to do 6 times 8. So take a minute to pause the video and solve that. From our previous problem, we know that 6 times 32 is 192. 6 times 8 would be 48. We are going to subtract those two. Again, take a moment to pause the video and subtract. Once you finish subtracting, you should get that same answer of $144 for the total cost. Why does Morgan's method work? Well, there's something that we've used before in previous grade levels that we call distributive property. Distributive property says that when I have multiplication and I'm multiplying times a group, that I can take the number that I'm multiplying by, that factor, and I can share that factor with every number in the group. So that is what Morgan has done with Morgan's method. With distributive property, I can distribute the 6 as a factor of each number in the group. So 6 times 32 and 6 times 8. That is why Morgan's method works. So we can use order of operations, we can draw a picture, Or we could use our properties, such as distributive property, to help us evaluate an expression. Let's take a look at number 4. Suppose the group also pays $75 for admission and that the cost of the posters is $4 instead of $6. This is the expression that you would use to find the cost. This problem wants you to evaluate this expression. So we're going to write our expression 75 plus 4 times 32 minus 8. And we're going to start with the first step in our order of operations. G is for groupings, so we're going to do 32 minus 8. That's going to give us 24. I bring down everything else that is in my problem. Now, if at any point you would like to solve this on your own, you're welcome to pause the video and work it out on your own, and then continue the video to check your answer. So after I have done my grouping, I look for exponents. There's no exponents. So then I move on to multiplication or division. There's multiplication here in this expression. So I want to multiply 4 times 24. 4 times 24 would be 96. If you need to come over to the side to do something like that, to do 4 times 24, 4 times 4 would be 16. 6, the 1 in your tens place gets carried to your tens position. 4 times 2 is 8, plus 1 more would be 9. So we have a 9 in our tens place, so 96. Then we bring down the other parts of the expression, and we do subtraction or addition. In this case, we are adding, so we want to add 75 to 96. 6 plus 5 is 11. 1 goes in the ones place, and then we bring a 1 over to our tens place. Now we have 1 plus 9, which would be 10, plus 7 more would be 17. So we have 17 tens. And our final answer would be 171. So the cost now would be $171. Number 5 asks us to reflect, to think about all the models and strategies we've discussed. Describe how one of them helped you better understand evaluating expressions with groupings. So what this problem wants you to do is to describe what parts of this make sense to you. Do you like using gems? Do you prefer to use PEMDAS? Do you prefer to draw a picture? Maybe you like gems, but when you saw the picture, that really clicked with you and made sense. I want you to describe how you're doing with order of operations. I want you to tell me if seeing the picture helped something click for you. So describe how one method or the other, one model or strategy or the other, helped you decide your answer. And you're going to answer that question on your own. With the apply it and the practice pages, there are only certain problems that I want you to do. I want you to do number 6 and number 8. So number 6 has a fraction, and we will talk about some helpful hints with that in just a moment. So you're going to do number 6 You're also going to do number 8. I do want to point out that the original expression for this problem is right here. I also want to tell you that when you start in your grouping, if there is more than one operation, so in this case we have addition and we have multiplication inside this parentheses, if there is more than one operation in a grouping, you need to start with your order of operations. Sometimes there's a group inside of a group. Sometimes there's exponents inside of a group. Sometimes there's multiplication and addition inside of a group. So looking back at that order of operations, just know which one of those is supposed to come first. Because what you're going to do is you're going to look at the steps that this person took to solve that expression. And you're going to decide which step has the mistake. And there is a step that has a mistake. If you need help with number 6 or number 8 in this Apply It section, please ask your parents to let me know, and I can Zoom with you, I can GoGuardian chat with you, any way that we can to help you understand these problems. You're going to skip over number 1, 2, and 3 on these practice pages, and you're going to go to number 4 and number 5. On number 4 and number 5, I want you to answer these 2 questions on your own. I will provide some assistance with number 4 and number 5, but I really want to push you guys to do these 2 on your own because I would like to take a look at them when you're done and grade them. So this would be our first grade in the grade book. So again, if you have questions on number 6 and number 8, I will provide all of the assistance that you need. On number 4 and number 5, I can give you some helpful hints, but that's as far as I will go with helping on number 4 and number 5. I want to get a really good idea of how you are doing with evaluating expressions. I told you earlier that I would go over some helpful hints for these 4 problems. Now, I'm only asking you to do 4 of the practice and apply it problems, but if you would like to do more, you are welcome to. And if you have questions about the other problems that I didn't ask you to do, I will be happy to answer those as well. Just let me know that you have questions. So with number 6, 8, 4, and 5, when we're working these, some helpful hints. When you have a fraction, like if you had 1/4 and you're multiplying it times a whole number, like 12, this is saying 1/4 of 12. So if I took 12 and divided it into 4 groups, how many would be in each group? So 1/4 of 12 is 3. If that way makes sense to you, please use it. Other people, it makes more sense for them to say 1/4 times 12 and then to make 12 into a fraction. If you would like to change a whole number into a fraction, you simply put it over 1, so 1 goes on the bottom. Then you would multiply across the top and then multiply across the bottom. So you would have 12/4. 12/4 is an improper or fraction greater than 1. So you're going to think of this as division. 12 divided by 4. 12 divided by 4 is 3. So that is a helpful hint when you have a fraction being multiplied by a whole number. If you have any other questions while working these problems, please feel free to ask. Oh, one more hint that I want to give you guys with these. If you have something like 6/6 plus 3, 6/6 is the same thing as 1, because our numerator and our denominator are equal to each other. So we have one whole piece. We have 6 out of 6 pieces. So what we're really saying here is 1 plus 3, which would be 4. So just remember, anytime you have a numerator that is equal to your denominator, you have one whole piece. So those are your helpful hints for these problems. I hope that you're able to complete these. If you have questions, again, please just let me know. This completes section 4 or session 4 of our lesson 0. And I will be back again for section 5.